Well, now kind of an interesting issue has come up with Candace Owens bringing up, is Kamala Harris actually what most people would consider a black American? Now, as far as this idea of, like, if you lived in America as a black person in the 80s and 90s, you clearly remember how you were treated if you were not hood. If you were, what was the song that some horrible bunch of harpies came out with? Where My Soldiers At, if I remember. There was MC Light's Roughneck. She's got to have a roughneck. What was it? Then, I mean, I even remember, how the period of time, EPMD and all of and Hit Squad and all them and all those groups, and how everybody started wearing Timberlands, and everyone had their cuffed Guess jeans and their Timberlands and stuff like that. So this has to be understood that there was fundamentally in the 90s a very strict distinction among black people about who is black, because there was a way you acted. Like, if you were good in school, that wasn't very black to other black people in the 90s if you were a young man. So when we're talking about Kamala Harris, this is actually outside of a lot of that kind of stuff. This is she in any way, shape, or form somebody who could be connected to the life experience of a black American in any way, shape, or form? And, well, she lived in Berkeley. That's what they got. That's what they got. And apparently Donald Harris, like Marcus Garvey, was a nigger from Jamaica. So this is apparently what the story is now. He was freeing black people from the white man or something, and then had Kamala, No, he was, just some radical leftist student who ended up in Canada, who came out of the Commonwealth and ended up in the Commonwealth, and that makes a lot of sense. One of those guys that, he's probably a very brilliant and a nice dude, and probably like very fascinating and everything. But when you're around a college city or a college town, you run into this a lot. These people who their 20s, they were kind of a fascinating character of sorts, but really after a while you're like, oh, so you're just an academic that nobody really knows anything about outside of academia, and like your field of okay, so you wrote a book or something, right? So this is now the thing with Kamala Harris now is obviously, one, from her body language during the debate with Trump, she's extremely uncomfortable about having her father discussed. Her body language was a tell like no other tells when he brought up her dad. She is very sensitive about talk about her father. She was probably not around him much. That's my first bet. So, and then we have this story of who was on her father's side, and none of it adds up. Now, one thing is, it does add up in a way, like if you kind of are a little more like, sort of the humorous cultural side of Jamaican culture. There's actually an old song called Shame and Scandal in the Family, and it's this very simple set of rhymes about your sister ain't your sister, but your daddy don't know. Your daddy, your brother ain't your brother, but your mama don't know. Blah 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 blah. All this weird stuff like this, and it's a funny. It's funny. It's very Caribbean. It's very British. It's very Commonwealth, and it's kind of humor, and it's bawdriness and stuff. And it's a very good ska song, done as a ska song. and it's old. Shame and scandal in the family. Oh. I want to say it's Stranger Cole who does it. That's off the top of my head. I think it's Stranger Cole who sung that song, or at least is the version I'm thinking of. And it's a great jam. It's a real good moon stomping song. But the thing is, skank your ass off to Shame and Scandal in the Family and think of Kamala Harris. But then there's that so then she has like this on the quote-unquote black side now. She has this weird, complicated, possible lineage, but Owens showed it. The numbers, the dates don't add up. And then again, this is one of these people who had a magical biography made for them right before they run for president. So it's just, and it's a person who has a weird-ass background that's not like most black people's. This is the part that now really I've been thinking a lot about. Why not somebody who just grew up in Atlanta, Georgia? Like, has this hit anybody? Why not somebody who grew up in Tampa? Has that hit anybody? You know, like, is just somebody from Muscle Shoals running for office too much to ask for? No, it's got to be somebody from some exotic jet set background that when somebody starts asking questions about, wait, you know, you kind of have such an elaborate background here. You're kind of where you were born is sort of called into question. Like if this was somebody who they were like a military family, that's one thing. If they were, there's a lot of different kind of things I'd be like, oh, that's not so questionable. Oh, you know, I can see that. But then when it's over and over again, oh yeah, I'm the child of academics. And that this is another thing. Why are there no black people who run for president who aren't like activists or academics? Like, why don't we have somebody who's like equivalent even remotely? Like, and when we do, they're Republican. When we have anybody with an even remotely normal black American background, they're Republican. And I would have to go back and look these guys up because of like how, and that people went out of their way to try to demonize these guys, and it's like their background is extremely normal. But Kamala Harris's is bizarre. Like she lived in like 7 different cities, you know, before she like kind of grew up in Canada. This idea like she grew up in Oakland, but it was like, as was pointed out again, like all of her addresses were solidly pretty much around the university neighborhood. So the whole, anybody who's been down there, like, you know, the university neighborhood is amazing. And at that time, the university neighborhood would have just been absolutely fantastic. Like you could just walk around the university neighborhood day and night. You know, it just can't even make clear. Like this isn't even somebody who, like if their address was something like, you'd look and you'd be like, oh, that's near San Pablo Boulevard. At least then, if they're like near San Pablo, you could say, okay, I could see how, like, that's pretty working class. Like, that's pretty normal people kind of place to live. But no, where she was living was solidly what you expect if somebody was a teacher or a student at the university and was very likely having, you know, their income supplemented. Now also, rents would not have been as steep compared to incomes, but there doesn't appear to be really, I mean, just, I don't know, there's some weird thing, and she's like, I knew business people who knew my mom, and they worked really hard, and I mean, I don't even, I mean, that was That's one of those ones that, like, one of those quotes, one of these lines that she said that I'm just like, yeah, how doesn't anybody coach her on this? Somebody should have coached her on how to say this, how to present this idea. This is her experience with somebody directly who had a business and, like, her family and, and da-da-da-da-da. But it just didn't, it falls so flat. Everything she says falls so flat. She's so poorly spoken. It's just bizarre. That's the next part of it, is how is a black person who is supposed so fucking accomplished, how is she so slow on her fucking feet? How is she so slow? And I mean this, like, black women, you're that fucking slow? Really? Like, you have that, you stumble over your words like that all the time? Like, in her field, like, she's been doing this a while. This is not like a new job for her, being, senator, and she did this, she did that, she's so accomplished. This is somebody who should be able to smoothly answer questions that are being lobbed to her like a child. They're being lobbed to her. This is Nerf ball. They're playing with Nerf balls. And nothing's even being tossed at her yet. So it's, and do you stumble? I mean, like, this is like those times when somebody is obviously lying about whether it's their car on, like, body cam. And that you're sitting there going, like, you didn't even practice, like, you can't even lie that that's your car or not, That's what she sounds like in interviews, yet she's been at this a fucking decade or more. I remember her running for her first office. I just can't even believe. I'm like, and just where the background. Just, so where is she from? Like, what neighborhood is she from? Like, a store, anything, anyone from any neighborhood who she could, like, say, I remember this, and I liked it, and it was good. Like, where? Who? In Canada? Some Canadian brand that she really liked? I mean, and, like, if somebody were to even bring up in Berkeley the Indian grocery store, would she know what I'm talking about? The Indian grocery store, as you go west of Shattuck. And go west of Shattuck, and I always forget that main drag along Berkeley where Eastwind Books opened a thing. The McDonald's is Shattuck, and I want to say it's an H, but I don't think so. And it crosses San Pablo. And it's like you have to go west of San Pablo Boulevard to get to the Indian, grocery store. Anybody who was there in the 2000s and the 90s would know about this grocery store. And this grocery store had been there so long. Very likely, this is the Indian grocery store Kamala Harris would have gone to. Where's this story? Where's any reference to anything normal that anyone who would have ever known where she's from can talk about? Can say, yeah, girl. Nothing. Because she's hella abnormal. She's an abnormal person. Like, here's a few. If she was so Oakland, if she was so Berkeley, if she was down, why didn't she talk about going to the Ashkenaz? Now, anybody who's from the Bay Area, now granted, this might have been too late. I might be talking about a place that had closed by the time, like, she just wouldn't have, it wasn't open by the time when she was, doing her thing. But why didn't she talk about the Ashkenaz or something as, like, a place that she would go to? Because that would be like one of those, like, oh yeah, I'm definitely black. I went to the Ashkenaz club back in the day. Like, but no. She doesn't, there's no stories like this because she's not genuine. She's not a very genuine person. And a lot of people who, I think this is really going to start hitting a lot of women really soon, is that men are no longer interested in a lot of stuff that we used to be kind of suckers for. The men's movement that has happened is simply now just something that, because there's too much reliance on, like, okay, well, is what this person's saying to me, does it make sense? There's too much reliance on that. Once you no longer make fucking sense, it does become this, I'm going to just sit back and wait for whatever you plan to bullshit me with, because you're definitely bullshitting me. And we get it now. We get, like, no, this is a major way that a lot of women get through life is by bullshitting, you know, and it's this yeah, just like how strumming guitar songs became somehow good in popular culture, that it was boys who brought their strumming skills to a party. Somehow guys like this got into the public sphere of music so intensely that we just have strumcore, like a decade practically of strumcore that millennial white women were into, to the point where you even find weird rap strumcore kind of mixes that just make you want to die, you know, that it almost sounds like the music to queer kid stuff. You know, it's got that weird almost xylophone thing going in the background that's like truly like, you know, are you a moron of the present generation? Here's your xylophone music, you know, I'm it's weird shit, but men bring this kind of stuff, and then it becomes a fashion, then it becomes a business model, and eventually, like, you have to talk all these chicks out of it in marketing. Like, nobody likes that shit. Toots, nobody likes that. And then what happens? A Tarantino comes along and shatters everything. You know, the guy who made Snatch and all those, they shatter everything. You know, a Guns N' Roses start and shatters everything. You know, people desperately need Patti Smith to be the person who shattered music and made punk rock. That's not real. And so it's where the boys are. And so now men are more politically astute. We're more historically astute than past generations, especially on the right. This movement everybody's seeing, this is that people who are right of center are more politically astute. And it's that kind of thing. Like they could look at information, they could see, like, I can see how the bias here is laid out. In a way that older generations can't. This has even resulted in, and you can see this, I like buttressing this, all these things with evidence from the culture itself. You could see this in memes that mock boomers. They mock the naivete of boomers and a kind of sunniness that's obviously just denying what's happening. They're just denying what's happening around them because it's easier. And so then, of course, the idea is the present generation in this meme is usually kind of dark-hearted, world-weary, stuff like that. And so, you know, so it's this world-weary youngster trying to, you know, like just getting more beleaguered because this older person doesn't understand how bad things really are. With the Gen Xer coming through with their rock star and being like, why do we do this? You know, and, you know, sometimes good, sometimes bad, whatever the this is. But I've been thinking about that. Like, older Democrats don't really understand how completely out of touch they come across. Their total and complete belief in MSNBC and all that has made them like these people who are kind of laughably daft is the way that it's seen. Yeah. All right. Cackle, cackle.